Welcome to Standing in the Gap's News Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a recent Russell Brand episode. It really got people talking. He dug into some pretty strong criticism Elon Musk is facing, especially from European leaders, and how it might signal a bigger shift in power. So is this all about Musk's actions, or is there something more going on? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, it's fascinating how this goes beyond a few controversial tweets. Brand paints a picture of Musk as this potential disruptor to traditional power structures, something he calls technological feudalism.
Okay, technological feudalism. Now that's a phrase that makes you sit up and pay attention. What exactly does Brand mean by that?
He's essentially arguing that tech giants like Musk, with their vast wealth and control over platforms like X, hold an immense amount of influence, almost like modern-day lords in a digital feudal system.
So instead of land and armies,
Yeah.
it's data and algorithms. That's a pretty thought-provoking analogy.
Exactly. And this power shift is happening, Brand argues, alongside a growing distrust in traditional institutions, like governments and media. People are disillusioned with the old ways, and figures like Musk who operate outside those norms become really appealing.
That definitely tracks with what we're seeing in the news. Musk is very vocal in his criticism, especially towards the UK government. He even went so far as to express support for some controversial political parties, like the Reform Party in the UK and the AfD in Germany. I mean, he even joked about liberating the UK at one point.
Right, and those endorsements, especially for parties often labeled as right-wing or populist, have definitely ruffled some feathers. Some people are concerned that he's intentionally trying to disrupt the political landscape, maybe even influence election outcomes.
I can see why that would raise some eyebrows. We saw some pretty strong reactions from leaders like Macron in France, Scholz in Germany, and Stur in Norway. They're worried about Musk's potential to sway public opinion, given his massive reach on platforms like X.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because while those concerns about undue influence are valid, Brand also points out that this outcry against Musk seems rather selective. It makes you wonder, would we be seeing the same level of alarm if Musk were supporting causes typically aligned with the established left? What are your thoughts on that? Let us know in the comments below.
That's a great point. It makes you think about potential double standards. Take George Soros, for example. He's another billionaire who's heavily involved in political causes and philanthropy, often backing left-leaning groups. But we don't see the same level of pushback against him.
Exactly. Brand uses Soros as a counterpoint to highlight this potential discrepancy. He argues that there's a certain level of discomfort with Musk's willingness to challenge the established order, particularly when those challenges seem to align with views that are outside the mainstream.
So it's not just about the actions themselves, but about who's taking them and what ideologies they seem to represent. That adds a whole new layer of complexity to this situation.
Absolutely. To really grasp what's going on, we need to dig deeper into the bigger picture, the rise of populism, the decline of trust in institutions, and the changing landscape of media and information.
Before we jump into that, though, I want to remind everyone that we are an independent podcast, and your support means the world to us.
That's right. If you value our apolitical, nuanced approach to these complex issues, consider heading over to our GoFundMe campaign.
Your contributions help us upgrade our equipment, so we can reach a wider audience and keep bringing you these deep dives. Every little bit makes a huge difference.
Welcome back to Standing in the Gap's News Deep Dive. Before we went to our little break, we were talking about how Elon Musk might be a symptom of a much larger power shift. It's like he's a piece of a much larger puzzle. And to see the full picture, we need to look beyond just him.
Exactly. And one piece of that puzzle that really stood out from the Russell Brand episode is this whole idea of declining trust in institutions. Brand argues that people are losing faith in governments and even traditional political parties. It's like the old systems just aren't working for a lot of people anymore.
That's a really sharp observation, and it ties directly into the rise of populism that we're seeing globally. There's this growing sense that the elites are out of touch, and people are looking for leaders who seem more authentic, more connected to their everyday concerns.
And Musk definitely fits that mold in a way. He's a self-made billionaire who builds rockets and electric cars, but he's also on Twitter cracking jokes and getting into feuds with politicians. He's not afraid to challenge the status quo.
Right. And that makes him both appealing and unsettling to different people. On the one hand, he's seen as this bold innovator, a disruptor who's shaking things up. But on the other hand, some see him as unpredictable and even dangerous, because he's operating outside of the traditional power structures.
You know, it's interesting how Brand brings up nationalism. as another piece of this puzzle. He argues that it's a kind of counterforce to globalism, and Musk's support for nationalist parties might actually be feeding into that trend. What do you think about that connection? It's a pretty hot-button issue these days. So let us know your thoughts in the comments.
It's a complex issue for sure. Globalism has created winners and losers, and there's this growing sentiment that it's led to a loss of national identity and sovereignty.
So nationalism could be seen as a way to reclaim that power, to push back against these global forces that some people see as homogenizing or even threatening.
Exactly. And Musk, with his Made in America approach and skepticism of international organizations, could be seen as aligning himself with that nationalist sentiment.
It's almost like he's become a lightning rod for all these anxieties about globalization, the changing economy, and the shifting power dynamics in the world.
And that brings us to another crucial element of this discussion, the changing landscape of media and information. Musk's control of X gives him a powerful platform to shape public discourse. How he uses it has major implications for how we consume and share information.
It's like he's created this alternative media ecosystem where he can bypass traditional gatekeepers of news and information.
And that has both positive and negative potential. It gives voice to perspectives that might have been marginalized in the past, but it also creates fertile ground for misinformation and manipulation. It makes you wonder, what are the potential long-term consequences of this power shift for democratic societies? Are we at risk of returning to a system where a handful of individuals control the flow of information and influence political outcomes?
Wow. That's a pretty heavy question. And I think Brand brings up a really important point. In this environment, figures like Musk, with their huge followings and ability to bypass traditional media, have a tremendous amount of power to shape the narrative.
It's a lot to think about. Are we seeing a democratization of information? Or are we seeing a fragmentation of truth? It's harder than ever to know what to believe and who to trust.
It seems like Brand is wrestling with this question too. Is Musk a chaotic force who's just shaking things up for the sake of it? Or is he a necessary disruptor of a corrupt system? Is he trying to build something better? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to let us know your thoughts on this, Street.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there might not be a simple answer. It's likely a bit of both. But what's clear is that Musk is a major force to be reckoned with, and his actions will continue to have a significant impact on the world for years to come.
And speaking of impactful figures, Brand also brings up another billionaire who's often seen as a counterpoint to Musk, George Soros. We'll be diving deeper into Soros's influence and activities in our next episode, so stay tuned for that.
Do you believe in standing strong for what's right? Do you value faith, freedom, and biblical truth in today's ever-changing world? Then we've got something special for you. Welcome to the Standing in the Gaps merch store, the official store of the Standing in the Gaps podcast, where we explore the social, economic, and political issues of today through a biblical lens. Here's what we've got for you. T-shirts that help you make a bold statement everywhere you go. Whether you're standing up for truth or sparking conversations, our shirts reflect the spirit of standing in the gaps. Need fuel for those long, thoughtful mornings or deep dive discussions? We've got premium coffee, roasted to perfection, along with sturdy mugs designed to hold that truth-fueled brew. Want to represent your values wherever life takes you? Grab one of our stylish hats to keep you covered, literally and figuratively. And don't miss our inspirational prints that you can frame and hang up at home or in your office, a daily reminder to stand firm in faith. But that's not all. From accessories to gifts, we've got a variety of items that let you stand out while standing strong for what you believe in. Every purchase supports the mission of Standing in the Gaps, helping us continue bringing you insightful content, meaningful conversations, and the courage to face the tough topics. So what are you waiting for? Visit Standing in the Gaps merch store today. Link is in the description. Grab some gear, enjoy some great coffee, and help us keep bridging the gap in today's world. Together, let's stand for truth. Together, let's stand in the gap. Now back to the deep dive.
Welcome back to Standing in the Gaps News Deep Dive. We've been unpacking this fascinating dynamic between Elon Musk and, well, seemingly the world, particularly through the lens of Russell Brand's analysis.
And I think it's important to emphasize that we're not here to put Musk on a pedestal or paint him as a villain. We're trying to look at this situation with a critical, nuanced lens.
Exactly. And to do that, we need to consider the bigger picture. What's happening with traditional power structures? Why are so many people distrustful of institutions? How is technology changing how we interact with information and with each other?
Precisely, because this goes beyond just Musk himself. He's almost like a symptom of a larger shift that's happening. It's like he's tapping into this deep well of discontent and channeling it in ways that are both exciting and unsettling.
Totally. And that's where the figure of George Soros, who Brand brings up, becomes such an interesting counterpoint. He's exerted significant influence on the political landscape, but through different tactics.
Yeah.
And often aligned with a different ideology.
It's a great comparison. While Musk is this very public figure, engaging directly with his millions of followers on X, Soros has traditionally operated more behind the scenes, funding organizations, supporting causes, and shaping policy through more subtle means.
So while they both wield significant influence, they're playing the game in very different ways.
Yeah.
It speaks to the changing nature of power itself.
Absolutely. In the past, influence was often wielded through traditional channels, media empires, political dynasties, established institutions. But now, with social media and the democratization of information, the rules are changing.
It's like we're seeing a decentralization of power. Individuals, even those without massive fortunes, could potentially have a huge impact through online platforms, building communities, shaping narratives, and even mobilizing movement.
Right. And that presents both opportunities and dangers. It gives voice to those who might have been silenced in the past, and it also creates opportunities for manipulation, misinformation, and the erosion of shared truth.
It makes you wonder, what does this all mean for you? What does this power shift mean for individual freedom?
It's like navigating uncharted territory. We're trying to figure out the roles of engagement in this new digital landscape, and the stakes are incredibly high. They are, because ultimately, this is about more than just Elon Musk or George Soros. It's about the future of power, the future of information, and the future of democracy itself. What do you think about all this? Be sure to hit that comment section and let us know.
That's what we try to do here at Standing in the Gap's News Deep Dive. We explore these complex issues, unpack the narratives, and encourage you to think critically. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share your thoughts with us.
And remember, we are an independent podcast, which means we rely on the support of our listeners. If you appreciate our apolitical, nuanced approach, please consider heading over to our GoFundMe campaign. Your donations help us upgrade our equipment. Things like better webcams, studio microphones, editing computers, and reach a wider audience. It all helps us make a bigger impact.
Thank you for being a part of the Standing in the Gaps community. We'll be back with another deep dive, exploring the influence of George Soros as promised. Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep standing in the gap.